Fred Hersch, pianist and composer, welcome to Cultural Attaché.
Hey, nice to see you.
I want to talk about your new album, Silent Listening. And I want it for people who are watching this, I want them to know that it's silent is not describing listening, but rather there's a comma between the two in the title. So I want to start by asking you, what is the role of silence in your music and in your life?
Well, that's a great question. I think obviously without silence, you can't have music or much of anything else. I think the title of this project partially refers to the specific place and circumstances around the recording of the album in a fantastic auditorium in Switzerland at the Swiss Radio in Lugano, a legendary auditorium with superb acoustics, fantastic piano, um, and and also the fact that I went into this album, I was prepared. I had some things that I wanted to play, but I also left a lot open to the last minute. I mean, I was working with the legendary producer Manfred Eicher, ECM Records. I wanted to have the Manfred factor be part of the equation. The silent part is, I think, this is maybe my 12th or 13th solo album, going back to, I don't know, the early 90s or something. And I think there's a lot of patience on this record, playing something, see how it lands, play the next thing. As a improvising musician, that's how you always want to be. You want to play the phrase and then see where it lands, and then the next thing comes. And if you have a goal or an expectation, then often you'll be disappointed, just like life. Or if you think of a tennis match, you can only play the shot that you're given, and you can try to maneuver the other guy around the court, but you can't control what's going to come back to you. So I like to be in that zone where it's, you know, I'm really minutely paying attention to each detail, which leads to the next thing. There's a lot of what I call spontaneous composition on the record, open improvisation, whatever you want to call it. And, those pieces are very much uh, that way, just paying attention to just the sonority, not the chord, not the, just the actual sound. So sound was such a factor, and the beautiful silence that you get playing in a room like that.
Well, it's interesting to me because I love the way you allow notes to just fade away. And then there's a pause before you even go on to something else. And I feel like you're not only allowing yourself to be patient, but you're asking your listeners to be patient as well.
Yeah, I think this record really unfolds like almost like a suite. It's it's kind of contra to the way that people consume music these days, which is by track or, I think this is one, both Manfred Eicher believe in the value of an album as a statement, a small film, if you will, a story. I think this album tells a story and builds on itself. Um, a lot of the selections I didn't plan to play, they just arrived. Certainly the spontaneous pieces just arrived. But when we put it together, we were totally in agreement about this is the sequence, this is how it's going to play out. And, it's not just a series of tracks. It's very much of a, if you will, sort of a unified statement. And the glue that holds it together is just sound. It's pretty immersive. It's a pretty immersive album. I mean, ECM piano recordings are always pristine and beautiful. But I think I'd like to say this one is even a little bit extra in terms of the color and the range. I was really, really happy with it.
And frankly, it's an album that I can't wait to hear in vinyl format, which I haven't done yet.
Yeah, well, and also ECM does, beautiful German vinyl pressings. It's going to be a really beautiful vinyl. And I'm thrilled with the cover design. I mean, they they do a fantastic job, and they're really getting behind this, which is really lovely to see.
Now, in the press notes for this album, you are quoted as talking about wanting to tell a story with this album. Yet at the same time, you're saying that some of the pieces just came to you as you were in the place. So I'm assuming that you had the story deeply embedded into your heart and soul, so that you knew what those pieces would be that came to you.
No, we recorded the pieces, and um, some of them, the open improvisations, I had no title at all. I had a list of um, titles of artworks by Robert Rauschenberg, and I would just assign like Night Tide Light. That's the title of a collage by Rauschenberg of Volon. I don't know what Volon means, but it's an interesting word. So we just picked that. But the story emerged. There was no, real intent. This was our first time doing a record together. We had done one record with Enrico Rava, a duo album, but that was different. Um, um, this was my first solo project for him. So uh, I kind of think the story just arrived. Um, and he's a great producer in what he says and also what he doesn't say. I mean, sometimes he just let me work stuff out. Other times he might say something. One point he went into the audience, which was kind of helpful. A couple of tunes I just played for fun, and he said, I really love those. I didn't intend to play them. Um, it was very much something that unfolded as we did it. But once we had the pieces, we completely agreed, like, this is the order, this is how the story gets told. So sometimes the pieces lead very smoothly into each other. Sometimes there's a very jarring contrast. Um, it's very cinematic, I think, but it wasn't intentional. I just wanted to make a record with him in that place on that piano and see what happened. And so this is what happened.
Right. Now, I can't help but believe that there is, whether intentional or not, a bit of a commentary about the world we live in. We are so easily distracted. It is so cacophonous. It's cacophonous even in your own concerts, probably when the cell phone goes off. Is there something that you wanted to infuse into this album about maybe I don't know if better is the right word, but a different way of living and existing?
Uh, well, yeah, I mean, that would be really nice if people slowed down and paid attention. I mean, most of the places that I play in concerts, or even my home club, the Village Vanguard, people are quiet. Um, it's maybe the one time in the day where they're away from their cell phone for 75 minutes, hopefully. Um, the final track, The Winter of My Discontent, which I learned, 45 years ago. Um, the lyrics are really, relevant to our time. And whenever I play any kind of standard or anything that has words, I'm really singing the words as I'm playing the melody. It helps me emotionally connect to the melody, but it also informs the way that I interpret it. Um, so yeah, there's a concentrated. This is a very concentrated album, and I personally I try to find time to listen to an entire album. I listen to a lot of vinyl, so it's only a 22-minute aside commitment, but find time to put some music on and not be while you're on the treadmill or doing your email. And who knows how many people out there actually do that, but without being fat-headed, I'd say that the people that do take the time to listen to this thing through, I think there's a reward. There's a story and a payoff, and uh, some of the pieces are only 3 minutes, 4 minutes. I mean, they're not, you know, no, the standard for jazz albums the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years since the CD era has been basically 10 tracks and 60 minutes, give or take. Seems like every jazz CD is like that. And now we're getting to the era of shorter projects. First of all, we're in the era of LPs coming back. So if you do a 45 or 6 minute album, you cut it in half, you have a CD. I mean, you have an LP. So I think, and also when you make shorter albums, people are maybe a little more likely to actually dip into the whole thing. You know, if it's a 65-minute album, I mean, a live album is an exception. Live albums, that it's always going to be longer. But there's also the excitement of feeling like you're there. But this record's about 50 minutes. The one I did with Enrico Rava was 43 minutes. You know, I think we're in the era of not, you know, overdoing it. Like less is more.
Is that better for you as an artist?
Yeah, it is. I'm going to record a trio album for ECM next month, and you know, if it's only a 45-minute album, that's only going to be 6 or 7 pieces, most likely, because there'll probably be a bass solo or two and something for the drums to play, and that adds to the length. But it could be a project you know, depending on what we come out with, where the CD would be a little longer, the LP we would trim a track or two. Um, I think it's great that LPs are coming back. To me, they never left. Uh, um, I'm looking over there. I've got probably a good 1,500 vinyls, and some of them I've had, you know, since childhood. And it's still kind of the best delivery system for music sound wise. And as I said, you know, you listen to one side of an LP, it's 20, 22 minutes, something like that. And then you have to go up and you have to take the needle off. And you know, I remember as a kid, you know, when pop albums would come out or when albums we liked by all the greats, whether it was, you know, Joni Mitchell or, you know, whoever it was, Stevie Wonder, we would always debate which side was the better one. You know, you'd listen to, some people would be, you know, side A is the best, side B, but I remember as I learned to play jazz, kind of self-taught out in Cincinnati, Ohio in the early 70s, I would have one side of one LP on the turntable for days. And I just keep listening to that, you know, those 5 tracks, 4 or 5 tracks over and over again, and get to know them deeply. And we're in an age where everything is, you know, the algorithm says, if you like that, listen to this. And if you, you know, and everybody's twitchy with their fingers. Excuse me. So, yeah, I'm glad that LPs and on the road, people are buying LPs more than CDs actually, which is cumbersome to get them around, but it's good that they're buying them.
Well, I'll use this bit of our interview to show to my husband so that he understands why I'm passionate about LPs and why I just spent $80 on a record store day exclusive of Art Tatum piano recordings
Oh, wow,
from
okay, yeah,
Chicago.
yeah, that's great. Yeah, Record Store Day, that's fantastic. You know, it's a great thing that they do. That's really
Abs-
beautiful.
Absolutely. Now, I have noticed in the past couple years, you know, listening to, you know, artists like Gerald Clayton or Joel Ross, or even the half of Slow Game that you produced for Sullivan Fortner, that people, at least in the jazz world, are expressing themselves in a more quiet manner than they used to. Um, do you think there's something going on in our world that's inspiring it? Is it just the chaos of the world, the uncertainty of it all? I mean, what do you think is inspiring not just you, but other artists to express themselves in perhaps a more delicate way than they had before?
I mean, it's a great question for which I don't have an answer. I think, you know, there are incredible, you know, 40 and under musicians or 30 and under musicians. I mean, certainly you mentioned players like Gerald Clayton or Sullivan, who are kind of state of the art younger jazz pianists in my estimation. Um, Great instrumentalists and very deep in their way of playing the language and also with their own perspectives. When I have my ear to the ground, certainly living in New York. I go out and hear people. I've taught a lot of these great younger pianists over the years. I always learn a lot from the way that they speak the language, which is different. When I came to New York in 1977, I mean, the job description for being a working jazz pianist was you had to know tunes, you had to be able to swing, you had to be able to company well. If you sight read, that was a bonus, but that was it. And now all the young musicians are expected to be composers and manage their internet empires and social media presences and produce their own albums. And, the technical bar, they're young pianists who are just playing technically crazy things. And, the language evolves. But we were not expected to be composers. We were not expected to do anything other than apprentice your way up the chain with the great leaders and eventually begin to make your own projects. And I serve that. People like Joe Lovano also, he's older than I a little bit, but we did that. We apprenticed before we stepped out on our own. That was just sort of the way that you did it. And now, we have 21-year-olds winning a competition and getting shot out of a cannon as jazz stars. And that's a very different model. And we also have in the world 200 jazz schools or something. I don't know how many jazz schools. So that's had an effect on people. But I think I would say some of the people that you're mentioning who are more mature, who are able to hold more stillness and withhold all the stuff that they could play. These are the more artistic ones, in my opinion. But you also have young musicians with incredible technique and exuberance. And that's kind of a beautiful thing too. But I listen to them and go, okay, they'll be great when they start to weed out and have more patience. And it's funny. Excuse me. I compose all kinds of music and I write with a pencil. I'm pretty old-fashioned with that. I tend to either write in a quick burst or very slowly. And a lot of young jazz composers, they write a lot on the page. There can be lots of sections and meters and, it's a lot of composing. It's a lot of stuff. And I was on a composition residency with Meredith Monk some years ago. And we are both meditators, and I came to her studio, we meditated and talked and had tea. And she asked me, well, how's your work going? I said, yeah. She said, well, what have you been doing? I said, well, I did that and I did that. And yeah, I guess I did that. And she just looked at me. She said, for me, it's a good day when I get one phrase I like. And I think of some of the great composers. I mean, everything that Monk wrote fits on 86 pages, everything. And each one of those pages is a world, or somebody like Carla Bley, who just passed away. I mean, it doesn't look like much on the page, but it's fantastic. So I'm that generation where it's not where I spent a lot of time on the craft and it doesn't look like some epic science project. But in the way that I play and the way that I compose, I want things to be to create the atmosphere and impetus for good improvisation, and it's not so these younger generation, I think of somebody who's a great virtuoso, but also a great composer, Ambrose Akinmusere. I'm definitely a fan of his. His music has a vibe, and it's got a lot of emotion in it, and he's got this amazing range of sounds he gets out of his horn. But for every one of those, there's 6 more I could think of where it's a lot of stuff and kind of forgettable. It just nothing sticks. So stickiness in performance, improvisation, composition is like a quality that I value, and it doesn't have to be Andrew Lloyd Webber to be sticky.
I'm going to leave that there because I could go down a rabbit hole with that last
Right.
statement. Um,
Yeah.
I interviewed Sullivan Fortner about his album last year, and I've been following him since I first saw him with Cecile McLaurin Salvant. And he told me that you were an extremely nice man and that you're not an easy person to please. So I'm wondering how easy is it for, or how challenging is it for you to please yourself, either when you're composing or playing?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I can be a little tough on myself. Uh, Also at the point in my career where I've done so many projects, to find something new, that's where I am now. It's like, I don't need to make another record just to make another record. I want to make something that represents growth, some kind of something different. Um, uh, yeah, I'd say, when I get off the stage after a concert or a set, I guess this is probably insane, but I sort of give myself a grade. Was that a grade A set or a B minus set? And once I get down in the B minus area, I don't feel good. But I also know that, Roger Federer didn't win every match he played. And not every night you go out there, you're going to hit it out of the park. It's just not really humanly possible. And also that people don't know what you're not playing or what you wish you could play. They only know what they hear. And they don't know if you're playing in Innsbruck tonight, what you played in Basel the night before. All they know is what they're hearing now. So that's really a good thing to bear in mind. I teach this all the time. Don't obsess about what you're not playing or what you wish you could play or what you played yesterday that you can't play today. Every time, blank slate, if you make a mistake, use it. You already played it. There's no point in tensing up about it. It's like if I play something that I frankly didn't intend or a complete boo-boo, um, I don't panic about it. It's like, okay, maybe that opens a door to something else. But if you react in a negative way, it's not really helping you. Um, I think with Sullivan, when I'm dealing with somebody with a talent level like that, you know, um, first of all, people don't need to pay me to say, oh, you sound great. That's not really, I always say, wow, that was great. But there's always a but. And uh, I held him, and when we were working together at the highest possible standard, and people used to joke about me when I taught out in Michigan. They used to call me Professor Hersch because I don't mince words, but I feel like that's my job, is to hear somebody play, react, and say, "Wow, that was good," but these are other things that you could be adding or doing, or why did you do that there? What was your, or even why are you playing that tune? Like, what does it mean to you? Like, how are you presenting it to me? Or if it's your own tune, how are you making it so that it sticks? Um, so yeah, it's a pleasure and a gift to teach such talented individuals. And I'm just really glad that people are really coming along to how great he is finally. And I had to nudge him to make that solo record. I bugged him forever, and I just said, we're going to do it. Here's the studio, done. And I'm really glad that he put that out there because I think it's a good statement.
Well, yeah, and apparently he told me that he wasn't gonna put just the solo album out. Any distributor had to take both albums, solo and game. And good for
Right.
him for having the balls to do that, frankly.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I agree. That game's stuff was very important to him. So I'm glad that it's out there for everybody.
Now on slow, he did just you had him record just single takes of things. And I know you did far more songs that were released. How often do you rely on single takes for your own recordings?
Yeah. I've learned over the years of doing it that sometimes you do a take, like for instance, on silent listening. I recorded the Russ Freeman tune "The Wind," and it's the longest track on the album, 7 minutes. Um, and on the melody repeats twice. I just played the melody kind of at the end, uh, and both times I played a wrong note in the melody. Both repeats, I played the wrong note. Same mistake, same place. And the Fred 20 years ago would never put that out. Like, oh no, people think I don't know the melody because I'm always bugging people like, you don't really know the melody. I made the same mistake twice. But there was magic in the take. And especially with things like ballads, you just have to go with the feeling. And to me, if I get a take and I'm really in the flow, in it the whole way through, no lapses of concentration, just it unfolds naturally, I won't do another one because I might get, quote, better, but then it's going to be confusing later on between the take that has the vibe and the take that's more perfect. I think I've learned to just leave things alone now. If it says what I want to say, I don't keep chewing on it. Um, uh, Most of the pieces on the album were single takes. There were a couple that I redid. Of course, the open pieces were the open pieces, and there was no second takes. Um, Yeah, and I didn't intend to play Star-Crossed Lovers, which I've recorded twice before, but I just liked what I did, and I didn't intend to play Softly as in a Morning Sunrise either, and that was just something that I was doing. Um, so I think the best way to make an album for jazz, like I do or Sullivan does or whatever, is you prepare everything or you have an idea, but you leave open for the magic to happen when the tape is rolling. If you figure it out and then execute it, to me, that's anti-jazz. That's not, I don't want to hear people regurgitate what they know. That's not interesting to me. I want to hear people play what they don't know. That's when it gets good. When you're actually exploring as the recording is going on, you know, and you just have to be in the right headspace to allow it to happen and not the the idea of Sullivan giving me a list of all those tunes and me just picking them and in some cases telling him how I wanted to play them. It meant that he didn't have to think about it. He could just react, you know. And a good musician, that's reaction is a huge part of it. A huge jazz musician,
It's everything, isn't it? Listening and reacting.
right? Yeah. Well, I got into jazz to play music with people and in front of people. Um, and growing up, the paradigm was if you don't want to be a concert pianist, you're not serious, and I always liked to improvise starting as a 5, 6 year old. I liked to improvise and then discovered jazz, and it was a great language, obviously, for improvisation. And hanging out with all the people in the clubs was fun. And it didn't matter what your age was or your race was or where you came from. Everybody had this shared love of this music. Nobody's making any money. It was kind of romantic in a way. And um, it is about reacting. If when I'm playing trio, yeah, I'm nominally the leader, but I'm really 1/3 of what's happening. So I have to allow the musicians to add what they do and allow myself to be inspired by them. In duo, it's even more intense because, it's just this intimate conversation. Solo, I am reacting to the feel of the piano under my hands, the touch, and the actual sound in the room. And then the emotion of whatever piece I'm playing is a large part of it too. I have to play kind of the right piece at the right time in terms of the emotional connection that I get from it.